Hey there, I'm the man who shouldn't speak, and I'm going to talk to you about the new Morph module in Drambo 2.0. The Morph module is great. Its number one use really is to modulate parameters that you weren't able to before. I think that's its most important use in Drambo, and we can have a look at it now. If we think about what modulation was in Drambo, whenever you have one of these little triangles here with little arrows, then a knob is modulatable. Modulatable. So, for example, while you can modulate any parameter using a parameter lock, so I'll just which is that one? So I'll choose one of the ones that has an arrow next to it. So here, have a little sequence. You can hear the there. Excellent description of that particular sound. So yeah, you modulate any parameter in that way. So if I wanted to just do this ratio here, I'll be able to do that. Even though there's no triangle next to it, I'll be able to do a parameter lock. I would also be able to do a scene lock. So if I hit this here and I highlighted that and I moved the ratio up like that, and I moved this knob across, see the value here moving as I move the scene towards there. So get rid of that scene lock. So I can already affect parameters that aren't triangled parameters. However, previous up to now, it wasn't. You weren't able to modulate them in ways like using an LFO or anything like that. And I'll show you that if I put in an LFO. Here, LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. It's basically just an oscillator that moves really slowly compared to the sound of a normal oscillator, which is very, very, very fast in comparison, usually. You can see here that we can choose this knob here, and if we select it to be modulated by the UFO, we can select the amount we want to modulate it by, and then we'll hear the FM index kind of rising up and then lowering, then rising up again as we play. I'll slow that so you might be able to hear it a bit more easily. Rising up and slowly rising down, lowering down. So that works. I'll get rid of this now. That removes the knob. So that works with knobs that have a triangle next to them. However, up to now, you weren't able to use an LFO with a knob that had no triangle next to it. As you can see, I'm clicking on this, but nothing's happening. Whereas if I click on this one, the modulation options appear. So let's get rid of that. Now, why would you want to adjust a parameter that isn't triangled? Well, for fun, it's cool. But the reason that this option was hidden for these, well, not hidden, it just wasn't there for parameters like the ratio, is I think it's something to do with CPU in terms of it might be more expensive in terms of CPU for the knobs that were untriangled. So while you can now go wild with the Morph module, as I will show you, just if you do loads and loads of modulation, you might want to watch your CPU a bit. because that might be a reason why some of these knobs weren't modulatable before. However, let's explore this morph module, which you can find in Modulator. If you head up to the top, then it's under this new heading called Meta, as in metamorph. I quite like that. That's quite amusing. And then we can select an amount we want to modulate. If we hit this assign here, it says plock morph 1 on here, and then all you do is you change this value to how much you want this knob to modulate it. So for example, here we were on 3, weren't we? So if we put this on 13, and we can see the 1 here, then if we click on assign, you can see the little shadow of where the original position of the knob is and where this new maximum modulation position is. Then what we see is as we return this to 0, it returns to 3, and then we can move it up, and for each 0.1, because we've assigned the knob to move up 10 in terms of the ratio, if it's all the way across, as you can see here, it's if you move it all the way across, it's 13. Then you can work out that if we move it up 0.1, that'll move the ratio to 4, 0.2 will be 5, 0.3 will be 6, etc. And so this enables you to finally dial in modulations a little bit more, because you actually see the value. This is a bit easier to do than it is with the scene lock. Also, there are advantages here in that we can assign an LFO to the morph knob, and that will replicate having an LFO directly assigned to the ratio. Plus, we can dial it in as much as we want to, as we've already seen. So here, if I now do the LFO, let's do the LFO all the way. You can see, even without us pressing play, it has already begun to work. We hit play. And there we are, that's the LFO moving back there. And if we turn off bipolar, then it should only move in the direction we want it to move in. If we reduce that to 0, then it will return to the position that the knob was to begin with, and then when it moves to the equivalent of 1, it'll move to where the maximum value of the modulation we set was. So to make that work nicely, turn off bipolar, because otherwise it's always a bit weird. So yeah, so we can dial this in as much as we want to. So if we reduce this LFO value, then it'll only move a small amount away from 0. LFO's always running, so yeah, you can run it really quickly, and you can see what happens as we increase the value of the LFO. Then we can see it hitting this. So if we make this one big long note here, actually turn decay way up on a few of these. Look at that. Truly a very musical sound. However, as with all modulation, as I explain on my videos, the rest of my tutorial series, available on youtube.com, modulation and kind of variation sequences and things can either be really extreme, or they can be subtle. You should dial them in as much as you want to, really. So yeah, that is one thing you can use the morph module for, is to modulate values that you weren't able to before. So you could either put an LFO on something that you weren't able to before, or if you just want to have the morph as a convenient kind of knob to finally dial things in, and you can assign it to more than one thing at once. So let's hit assign again. Remove this FM index, remove the ratio, and you can move them in like larger values or smaller values of modulation. So here I have the knob only affecting this slightly. I've got this knob being affected a lot. So if we remove this, then we can see that the knob we have a large movement for is moving a lot more than the knob we assigned a small movement from the morph to. So here it's like some computer war zone we have happening there. Let's talk about morph between tracks. So let's say we want to modulate something using a morph knob on tracks 1 and 2. I've inserted a kick track on track 2. We only have two values we can modulate, but let's do it anyway. These values were obviously modulatable before as well. Before the 2.0 update added the morph. However, it's very cool to use the morph to modulate lots of values at once. So let's use this because we can have a mixture of the values that we weren't able to access on the FM operators, and let's change the tune and decay on here, this kick track as well. So you might ask, can you modulate between tracks? And the answer is yes. However, you can't do this. If you insert a module on a particular track, on track 1, and you assign it, you can do the assignments that we did before. However, if you then try to assign it to the next track onwards, you can't. Now, you'd think that you would be able to do this because Drambo is very much like cool in terms of being able to modulate things around tracks. For example, here I just selected this LFO2, which I had placed on track 1, and that is able to. So if I mute this here, this LFO is changing the tune on this track. Let's remove this. So using this rack view in the top right hand corner here to be able to see all my tracks at once. So on this main track, on this track 1, I'll unmute track 1 now. Actually, can I unmute track 1 actually? If I'm holding mute and then I select track 1, yes. Oh, that kind of soloed it some weird way. Oh, something like that. Help. That's me just not knowing what happens when you hold views in that rack view. We'll investigate that at some point, but not right now. This is about the morph module. Okay, so we've established that you can modulate between track 1 and 2 using an LFO. However, if I now try this using the morph module, I had the morph module in here, just in here before, and it wouldn't work. Let's see if magically, if I put it over to the left here, then it will then magically work. I can still assign the other ones and then try the tune, but no, as you can see, the red's appearing here, which indicates that we are having an effect on this, but the red hasn't appeared here, so we're not having an effect. So Does that mean you can't use the morph module between tracks? No, it does not. You just have to use the main track. So here we have, this is where you can see all of the tracks, tracks 1 to 8, A and B sends, and the master track. If you insert the morph module on this track instead, then we can select things that we want to do on FM operator 2 and 3 on on track 1, but also we can now adjust values on here. So if I now hit play, it's a lovely noise. Craig David. Yes, if you want to have a lot of modulation across various tracks, then put your morph module on the main track, and then you can select between lots of things. Of course, you can have more than one morph module, which is cool. So you could lay out a few of these, and essentially on the main track have a kind of performance surface kind of thing. Because you can dial things in so precisely, and you can have more than one morph knob happening at once, it's a little bit more versatile than the crossfader with scene locks, even though scene locks are obviously very cool. You can combine scene locks, you can have the morph locks and the scene locks as well, and do variety of things, which is great. Just Drambo once again showing its versatility, but remember what I said earlier about how, for me, the most important usage of the morph knob, meaning that you can modulate things you weren't able to modulate before. So let's just do one more quick example of that with our little sequence that we had here. Let's not use an LFO. Load up the morph module, and instead let's use a graphic modulator. Now, what's this going to be? It's going to be very exciting. I think I'm going to be able to draw this in this window here. In fact, I can. That's exciting, isn't it? Let's do a little curve like that, and let's slow it down, and let's assign our morph again. Let's do a couple of things here. A couple is 2. I did more than 2. It's more than a couple. It's a few. It's several, really. Okay, so let's do that, and then let's put this. Let's just see what it sounds like. As we can see with this at the moment, what we have is it just playing in one value while I'm holding this. What if I wanted to use this as like an envelope to control how this modulation was happening? Let's have a look and see if this works. I've no idea if it will. But I think it is, because look, we can see it acting kind of an envelope here, so that's good. Let's see what it sounds like. We can make this quicker. Slow the speed. I mean, it's a shame I wasn't to be producing a more musical example, but never mind. So we're kind of using it as an envelope, but you can also use an envelope. So if we do attack and decay, let's select this envelope. That's what's happening. Then We'll do a slow decay there. We can do an attack on it. Whee! So all like that. So again, that's just using the morph knob to modulate parameters we weren't able to modulate before, as well as parameters that we could, and also assigning an envelope to it. Now, I actually quite like that graphical LFO that we had. You can also just kind of draw your own envelope here as well. So let's do that. Let's have a kind of attack and decay kind of thing happening there. Helps to actually assign it. There we go. And here we can see the difference between the graphic envelope and the LFO. The LFO will be always running, whereas the as you can see here, if I do the LFO again, this is always running. So it won't react to us triggering it. It will just run all the time. Whereas this graphic envelope triggers every time the note triggers. So if we have an envelope that's too long compared with how much we are repeating what's happening, then it won't work as well. In fact, if we place more notes here, then we can see it keeps repeating. So if you want an envelope that reacts on a trigger, then select the graphic envelope. If you want to draw it in and actually see it, I do like seeing what's happening. Or you can just use a normal attacked decay envelope, or indeed an ADSR envelope. Remember to use the ones in the modulator menu rather than the ones in the processor menu, because I think we'll find that if we get rid of this, I think we'll find that if we try to use this one in the same way, it might not work, or maybe it will work. Okay, it will work. I think that's because we're using it to modulate rather than actually using it on the sound itself as an envelope. From memory, what happens is let's get rid of this morph completely. From memory, what happens is that you need to have the processor envelope working to affect the sound properly. If you actually want to use the envelope for the proper sound itself, I'm not explaining this at all well. Rather than if you select instead the modulator envelope, that is only supposed to be for modulation. As you can see, I'm changing all the values here, and that isn't working at all. So yes, just even though it seemed that the morph module worked with the processor envelope exactly the same as it worked with the modulator envelope, I would recommend using the modulator options, not the processing options. But there is one cool thing you can do with the morph module. I'll just show here, which is if you let's change a few things on here again. Do this and do that, do this. You can actually use an oscillator as a modulation source. So if we put this here, that is modulating everything incredibly fast. As you can see here, the knobs are going wild. So that's a cool thing to explore. Anyway, thanks all for listening to this tutorial, watching this tutorial, and I'll see you all soon. I'm not entirely sure what I'll do next. Might be something to do with sampling, because I've been seeing a few questions about sampling. I also need to do a video about the Drambo 2.0.1 update, because there are a few things that have been fixed that kind of changed, so I might talk about that. But this has been in association with Morph. Thanks all for watching. See you all soon. Bye.